Well, this has been a long time coming, hasn't it? So, yeah, this is the first in what may or may not be a series in testing old and or notorious graphics cards. And I'm calling it the Ultra Nugget Graphics Card Roundup. It's the reason why you've been seeing that in the titles of all the shorts I've been posting recently. Anyway, for this video, we will be looking at these three cards. They are the S3 Verge DX, which can be upgradable to a full 4 megabytes of memory, an atiragexl with 8 megabytes of memory, an SIS315E. I'm not actually sure if it's the E or not. Actually, yes it is. I have the box right here. Yeah, 315E. And that has 32 megabytes of VRAM, as it says on the box, and a hardware TNL unit. So, yeah. And last but not least, the $2 Voodoo Banshee, which will just serve as a point of comparison against the other three cards. And yeah, that has 16 megabytes. So, yeah, those are the graphics cards. Unfortunately, my Alliance AT3D is still out for the count because I kind of botched the repair job. Its chip is currently desoldered right now. I need to do some PCB level repair because, yeah, my heat gun is garbage. Tore some traces. And as far as the motherboard goes, it's just a Shuttle MK32N. I can't really bring it over right now because it's still hooked up to everything. So, yeah. I guess we'll just cut over to the test now. So, yeah. So, yeah. This has been a long time coming, hasn't it? So, because I don't really quite know what I'm doing at the moment anymore, and I probably won't be doing any more of these, like, direct card comparison type videos with so many cards at the same time. I guess we'll just get right into the results. So, just as a side note, in general, if you see a 0, that just means that it crashed instantly. So, as explanation for some of these labels here, RageXL is the ATI RageXL without any OpenGL wrappers. With the W, it means that's using the wrapper, which in this case is Alt-OGL. Verge DXA is the Verge with the Alt-OGL wrapper. Verge DX S3 is with the S3D wrapper. And if we switch on over to this window real quick as well, let me just go on over to the system. We will just go over the specs real quick. So the specs are Windows 98 SE with kernel EX. The motherboard is a Shuttle MK32N, which is a socket A board that I miraculously found new in bag for like $5. CPU is an Athlon XP at 1.14 gigahertz, and we have 256 megabytes of PC3200 DDR RAM. And yeah, you can also see right here the explanation of every card and what its like aliases are. So yeah, there's all that from earlier, as well as the OpenGL strings that were reported. Oh, I forgot to include the... Okay, give me one sec. Oh boy. You can already very easily, well, obviously, I mean, see just the level of chaos that this video is already devolving into. But I guess that's what happens when you don't know what you're doing and you are trying to put this together while under a pretty good amount of stress from school. Yeah, so if you want to take a closer look, then just pause the video right here and let's go back to this window. So continuing on to Classic Cube, which is a Minecraft clone written in C instead of Java, and therefore is a bit faster. The Banshee blows everything out of the water. Most other things either refuse to load at all or crash instantly. I know that anything using AltOGL, like these two here, will crash the system hard enough that, once again, it needs a hard reboot. atiragexl at stock speeds without any wrappers, does actually launch, but is incredibly laggy to the point of unusability. And the Verge DX using the S3D wrapper, there's a weird bug to do with the S3D wrapper specifically, where if I try and use it with Fraps will just turn the entire screen yellow, making it impossible to really see what I'm even doing. But just from, I guess, eyeballing it without Fraps enabled, I was able to see that it was kind of playable, so I just BS'd up a 15 FPS there. It could be higher, it could be lower, but yeah. I guess you could take a look at my notes here for it. So yeah, all geometry is completely white. Oh yeah, okay. FPS was recorded using Fraps and just playing blindly, so I guess I just didn't take the direct average of it and just, I don't know anymore. I'm tired. Okay. Moving on to WGL Gears, which is the Windows version of GL Gears. And this is a incredibly simple test, and it's probably the only one where I can consistently repeat or recreate the results too. So the Banshee and the SAS card both, absolutely annihilate the competition, with both of them being somewhat mid-range as far as their release goes. The atiragexl was obviously very low end by the time it was released, and the Verge DX, as expected, is a graphics decelerator being beat by software OpenGL. And you can also see here that the atiragexl, when wrapped, does lose a good chunk of performance, likely due to the need to translate things from OpenGL to Direct3D first, compared to OpenGL natively. And also, side note, going back to this real quick, yeah, you can see right here, for some reason on Windows 98, the atiragexl's OpenGL ICD hooks into the generic GDI driver instead of having its own version string. So that confused me quite a bit at first, and that's why I also have the AltOGL wrapper thing, because I thought that it didn't support OpenGL. Anyway, returning to this. So yeah, almost 900 FPS on the Banshee, 750 on the 315. Everything else is around 200 or less. Going into 3D Mark 99, you already saw that short where the Verge got a grand total of 8 for its score because of test 2 or game 2 being like a frame per minute for whatever reason. But moving on to 3D Mark 2000, it's able to recover quite a bit, so it's just something weird going on with that one specific game. Though, granted, being under 1,000 while everything else is at least 1,000 or higher is not a very good sign for the Verge. And then, lastly, for tests that really had any usable result at all, there's Half-Life in OpenGL mode. So I excluded the S3 Verge from here because of the same reason that I kind of, I guess, guesstimated the 15 FPS on Classic Cube. And that is that if I tried to record the FPS using Fraps, then I would have zero idea what is going on screen because it's completely yellow. So I figured, you know what, I'm just gonna omit things. So yeah, I guess we can go over things in more detail now. So Minecraft, the graphics settings for every test I did, with the exception of these two here, is short render distance with fancy graphics and clouds enabled, no frame rate limit, and view bobbing, because with how low end some of these cards are, view bobbing legitimately does have an impact on FPS because of the screen movement. So, if we look at here, we can see that the Verge DX, if you turn the render distance down to tiny, is actually able to reach above 10 FPS, though it's not particularly good, and once again, these are mostly just estimated values because of the aforementioned problems. And another thing is that, especially using the Verge DX, it is extremely crash prone. You've probably seen how a lot of the videos that I've recorded using the Verge in Minecraft tend to end with the game crashing, and that happens across both the Alt-OGL and S3D wrapper. And then atiragexl is very obviously a very nuggety card in that it is obviously unusable for the game. And yeah, I skipped out on most other tests because after a certain point the game either became unplayable, like in the case of the Banshee I stopped after it reached 5 FPS because I knew that it just wasn't going to get any better. Same with the atiragexl. The atiragexl with the Alt-OGL wrapper insta-crashed each time. Wait, actually no. It did launch, but was ridiculously slow, so I just wrote 0 because it was less than a frame per second. And the 315E was barely able to beat out the Banshee much of the time, but then, starting from Infdev 1.136, it suffers a weird world loading crash that renders it unable to launch any version between this and beta 1.5 inclusive. And beta 1.6 test build 3 is where it reaches a sort of island of stability, I guess. And that is because Minecraft during this time here had an animated logo on the main menu, and for whatever reason that causes the card to crash. And then from beta 1.8 and onward, it starts suffering world load crashes again. So yeah. Wait, no. The animated title screen thing was for the Rage 128, which I ended up not including in this test because that would mean that I have to do every single one of these games again. Yay. Anyway, yeah. So for Classic Cube, it was the same settings as everything, though performance was much better, especially for the Banshee, partially due to the fact that it was running native code instead of running in Java. Though, for some reason, the Banshee did have a weird graphical artifact where the crosshair in the center would just, like, shoot out white lines in every direction. And for the Verge DX, it did launch just fine, but all textures were completely missing. We already know that WGL Gears is, basic, and the 315E was the card that lost. Actually, wait, no. The Verge DX with the Alt-OGL wrapper was the card that had the least amount of impact from Fraps having a certain amount of overhead. So, yeah, you can see here, the Banshee lost 200 FPS, well, 250 FPS actually, just from launching Fraps. And atiragexl natively only lost 7 FPS, the Verge DX with the AltOGL wrapper lost 2 FPS, and software OpenGL almost reached the native performance of the atiragexl as well, though it very obviously beat out the Verge DX, which, without fraps turned on, did actually show almost identical performance. And then the 315E lost 5 FPS. We already saw 3D Mark 99. The Verge DX does have issues with texture transparency. And then moving on to here, once again, we have some weird issues with texture transparency and broken lighting in certain tests on the Verge DX. And here's an interesting thing. With the 315E, for whatever reason, in 3D Mark 2000, if you turn off the hardware transform and lighting engine, it actually gets a higher score. And even further than that, if you choose the Pentium 3 CPU optimizations instead of the Athlon, despite running on an Athlon myself, it even further boosts the score. I don't have the exact figures, but, well, I used to have the exact figures, but I guess I deleted them at some point. But yeah, I talked with some friends over on the RetroWebs Discord, and apparently there's just some very weird stuff happening with the 315E's TNL engine, combined with the fact that it's starved of memory because it has to compete with the rest of the card's hardware, and very bad driver optimization, according to what I've heard. So, yeah, it could have been even higher of a score, but the TNL engine is so trashed here and so unoptimized on this one specific card here that turning it off will actually give you a better score. Okay, 3D Mark 2001 SE. So here, yeah, most things just crashed straight up. The only thing that was able to launch at all was the SIS card, so I didn't include it in the graphs. And then here in Half-Life, the 315E was able to almost keep up with Banshee, with an average FPS of 58 being just under the 60 FPS average of the Banshee. And yeah, this was also where I found out that Fraps does not like to do anything with Direct3D, apparently, in Windows 98. The atiragexl did okay. I wouldn't say that's very playable, but OpenGL mode was definitely a lot smoother of an experience compared to Direct3D mode, which, though it was seemingly faster according to the in-game FPS counter, it was extremely stuttery. The Verge DX in Direct3D mode, I think you've probably already seen what that looks like with, falling out of the tram in the intro sequence. And then in OpenGL mode with S3D enabled, it got a very slightly higher FPS, maybe. I couldn't really tell because a lot of the textures were missing, and yeah, the FPS counter was also pretty garbled, if I remember correctly. So it was mostly, for the most part, something that felt a lot like its Direct3D performance. And then, yeah, both the SIS card and the Banshee typically ran into the 72 FPS engine limit. So, yeah, that's the Ultra Nugget graphics card roundup. I am definitely not going to do this again anymore. I know that I said in the intro of this video that I might make this a series, but after the experience of making this video, because I recorded that intro sequence almost 2 months ago, actually, now. Yeah, that intro sequence has been around for almost 2 months now, if I remember correctly. Anyway, yeah. It's been a while. and I'm not doing this again. I am just gonna go back to my usual weirdness that happens in videos. These sort of structured things are not what I like to do. I have very quickly discovered that. But thanks for watching, and I guess I'll mention that I do have a Patreon, link in the description. I don't have anything else to really say. Oh yeah, Discord's also in the description if you want to talk about this sort of stuff. Until next time, I'm out. See ya.